Back in 2018, the game Octopath Traveler released for the Nintendo Switch to critical acclaim. Known for its unique HD 2D graphics, Octopath Traveler gave the player the choice of 8 different playable characters that boasted 8 different storylines. In reality, the storylines weren't all that different from one another, yet it still presented a unique style of storytelling alongside a vast array of character interactions and playstyles, leading it to be called, quote, the magical RPG the Nintendo Switch needed by Polygon. To those who may not know why I'm bringing up Octopath Traveler, let's go through all of the similarities between it and the upcoming Triangle Strategy. Firstly, they're both developed and published by Square Enix, with lead producer Tomoyo Asano. Asano, who was also one of the producers in the cult classic Bravely Default series, wasn't the only team member to work on all of these projects, as Naoki Ikushima has led the artist direction of all 3 games, explaining why they aesthetically all look very similar to one another. Even the codename for Octopath Traveler was Project Octopath Traveler, just like Project Triangle Strategy turned into the current game name that I still feel is a placeholder even though the game is about to release. Thanks to all of these similarities, there are some who think that Triangle Strategy is some sort of sequel or that it even takes place in the same world. However, Square Enix hasn't specifically said whether Triangle Strategy is related to Octopath Traveler in any way. Now that we've gone through some background information, let's get into what Triangle Strategy is even about. Releasing on March 4th, Triangle Strategy lets you play as Serenoa Wolford, whose family is considered one of the 3 great houses in the Kingdom of Glenbrook. Glenbrook is one of the 3 kingdoms in the realm of Norzelia, with each kingdom controlling a key resource. Glenbrook is centered on a river, making it a hub for trade. Then there's the Grand Duchy of Esfrost that sits atop an iron deposit, and the Holy State of Hyzant, which possesses a lake that produces salt. Inevitably, war between the nations broke out in what would be called the Salt-Iron Wars. The demo takes place during an invasion of the Kingdom of Glenbrook, as Serenoa Wolford is sent to aid the royal family, which brings us to the actual gameplay of the story. Or at least, it should bring us to the gameplay. One thing that JRPGs love more than anything is cutscenes, and boy do you get a lot of them. The demo literally took 13 minutes of cutscenes before you even get to control a character. After some rough calculations, I ended up getting about 50% of the demo being cutscenes, which, after playing the 4-hour demo, is a staggering amount of just watching exposition. I also need to be specific on which demo I am talking about, as the version I played was the first one that starts in Chapter 6 of the game. A newly released demo starts you from the very beginning, and will allow you to carry over your progress if you pick up the game. When you do eventually get to play the game, there is a lot to enjoy about it. The actual combat has some nice tweaks from the standard turn-based RPG mechanics, such as where a character is facing. This makes them more vulnerable to attacks, and even lets you get a bonus attack if you have flanked your opponent.
It's over. Victory is within reach.
One thing that did stick out to me is that even though some attacks are more effective to some units than others, there really isn't a rock, paper, scissors mechanic, or should I say, a triangle strategy combat system like there is in Fire Emblem, where swords beat axes, axes beat lances, and lances beat swords. Since approximately half of the game is an assortment of cutscenes and narration, then the story must be really good in order to make the game appealing. While I was honestly annoyed with the frequency of back-to-back cutscenes, I can say that there is a very well thought out story. And while the load times were addressed in the newly released version of the demo, it would add so much frustration to watch a scene go to a load screen, click on the exact same spot on the world map, go to a load screen, just to watch what was basically a continuation of the scene we saw earlier. As I played the demo, I noticed one of the big reasons why the cutscenes got on my nerves so much was due to poor voice acting.
I still need you. Father. Father.
If these instances were due to minor characters, I feel like I could move on from it, but when the main cast suffers from this, it makes dark moments that are supposed to be full of sorrow and dread instead turn into comedies. For example, in this situation, both of these characters have lost someone who is very close to them. A knight delivers unfortunate news about the death of another character, so how does Serenoa try to comfort his lifelong friend?
Sir Maxwell, you too abandoned me now?
This may seem minor, but there are whole lines of dialogue that are delivered with the feeling of just getting it done rather than matching the tone of the scene or even matching the tone of the characters that they are talking to. A bright side to all of this is that although it sometimes feels like too much exposition is being dumped on you, the story is well written and the choices you make can have vast impacts on the narrative, making every decision truly feel like there was a consequence. The biggest game-altering mechanic is the scales of conviction, which are a voting method in order to make the game's biggest decisions. Your party will be presented with a question and each member gets to cast a single vote, including yourself. Before the voting, you are given the opportunity to sway the minds of those casting the votes to try to tip the balance of scales in whichever direction you prefer. However, convincing others will require exploration and gaining knowledge from local surroundings in order to make a compelling argument. This lets the whole voting system and convincing mechanic give the player a sense of choosing the outcome that they really would like, but they actually have to work for it. In the case of a tie, the player is given the option to choose the outcome. And I do not want to give any spoiler about choices, but the outcomes are drastically different, and ending the demo shortly after seeing the outcome of your decision is something that sticks in the back of my mind that makes me want to see more. In truth, however, I can't say that I will be getting this game when it comes out. I was extremely excited when the game was announced, and while the demo had been available for a while, I always put it off because I figured I would buy the game day one. Unfortunately, the issues with this demo have piled up so high that I can honestly say I look hesitantly at it. If you aren't bothered with the upwards of 20 to 30 minutes of cutscenes between your gameplay, then you should go for this game. But in addition to poor voice acting and the lack of actual gameplay, I cannot in good faith recommend this game to people. I mentioned there being a new version of the demo that starts from the beginning of the game, but I can't bring myself to play it after this experience. However, that shouldn't stop you from at least trying it if you're still interested. I hope this video has been enlightening and enjoyable for you to watch. Have a great rest of your day, and as always, be kind to one another. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters Relativity, Naughty Dog is King, and Rhonda, Aaron's mom, Proctor. If you'd like to support my channel on Patreon, there will be a link in the description below. Also, thank you to everyone on my Discord for helping drive me to rework my demo diving series. It's great to have such wonderful people behind me on my venture into YouTube. If you've made it this far, then there's only one thing left to say.
Well, slap my ass like I was just born.